Hey guys, welcome back. So today we want to talk about the 1911 and why it's not going away anytime soon. Today, Jason's joining me once again.
Hey guys.
And I honestly don't know where he stands on this issue. I mean, I kind of do because we've had many conversations over the years, but your tastes and interests have also evolved as mine have, right?
Of course.
So first of all, it is, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I think this handgun is here to stay. I see young guys buying them at the shop. I see older guys buying them. I mean, they seem to have broad market appeal. It just screams America. Things served us as our primary infantry sidearm for 75 years. Past that, the Marine Corps used them all the way up until just recent times. And it's served well. The FBI team, their SRT team, they used them. LAPD, SWAT used them. They had that horrible Kimber SIS thing that they did. They had the Special Investigative Service or whatever it is, SIS.
Yeah, I think we did a video on that thing. That thing
we did. It was horrible.
Bad.
They said it was designed by gunfighters for gunfighters. I'm like, what gunfighter wants to grab, basically Vaseline lube slides with no serrations? It's like, but anyway, so the gun is stuck around. So all the weapons guys have been checked for safety and they're all clear. This is a classic 1911 military model. This is a reproduction. This one is from SDS. And it is a Turkish-made clone of the original military 1911, or at least the A1, which has the extended trigger and the hump on the mainspring housing. But anyway, classic handgun, impeccable ergonomics, and it's chambered primarily in a cartridge that Americans love because bigger is better, 45 ACP, but obviously they've been chambered in everything from, 380, even 22s, some of the little tiny 22 replicas that have been out there, but
Would you call it the soul-sucking 45?
Yeah, all you got to do is get in the same zip code with your shot, and it'll just suck the soul out of everything in that zip code. You don't have to hit anything. But yeah, 45 is just as American as the 1911. I mean, it was developed right here in the United States for an American service pistol, and it has a cult-like following. And a lot of people would say a 45 ACP and anything other than a 1911 is sacrilegious, right? I won't go that far, but it's been said.
You've got your purists out there in just about every, firearm niche out there, ARs, AKs. It doesn't matter what it is. You'll have your purists that's not a 1911. This is, or whatever it is.
Right. Yet, comrade, AK is fine.
So
great meme.
I know I never really had an experience until I met you many years ago with 1911s. I always looked at them and they were always way out of my price range. And I guess that is associated with hand fitting. And I know recently the prices have come down on them from certain companies because they're kind of mass producing them. Mm-hmm. Tolerances are a little bit looser. They're not necessarily hand fitting. But what we noticed when we shoot them, and you taught me this about hand fitting and the ejector of it, if it's not tuned right, the rounds will be spitting back into your face, and that's not ideal. And so I think there's a lot of people that, have this look at the 1911. It only holds 7 rounds or 8 rounds or whatever they're up to nowadays. It's only
2011
45,
full, yeah.
And then the ejection. If you get brass spitting back in your face, you're like, this is a piece of crap, But until you've actually shot a true hand-built 1911, you're really missing out, because I've got to experience that with some of the guns that you have. And it's like, wow, this is actually really nice. Still not my cup of tea. Yeah. I still, I've had a 45 1911 for a little bit, got rid of it. Wasn't my thing, but I have to say I like the Staccato 2011, the 9mm double stack. Now that's probably one of my favorite handguns to shoot.
Yeah.
That XC model, it's just something.
It's
nothing I would take on a defensive role,
right.
But it's definitely a fun range toy, that's for sure. But
yeah, I would agree. And the 1911, I think one of its biggest appealing features are the ergonomics.
Yes.
The gun, I've taken new shooters out many times and taught them how to shoot a handgun. And at the time I was carrying a 1911 with me, and they would want to shoot the 1911. And with, say, a Glock or M&P or any regular striker-fired handgun that people carry and use, the new shooter was struggling to get decent groups, right? They were struggling as they learned how to fire a pistol properly. Take a 1911 and put it in their hands, and instantly their group sizes would improve. And I attribute that to the really amazing trigger that most 1911s have and the unimpeachable ergonomics. I mean, they just simply are the standard by which other guns could be measured, at least in my opinion. Now, CZ75s and high powers, people have their preferences there in terms of ergonomics, but I've never handed a 1911 to somebody that went like, this doesn't fit my hand.
Oh, I know. There's something about these guns, like especially even this M45A1. When you get your hand nice and deep in this beaver tail, for whatever reason, the ergonomics on a 1911, it just plants your hand in a perfect position. I do always get a natural point of aim with a 1911. And then definitely out of any hammer-fired pistol out there, I prefer the 1911's trigger.
Oh, yeah.
It's just something about them. They're you've got this little bit of take up, and then there's a solid wall there, and it's going to break, and it's, the resets are quick. You can shoot these things really fast and accurately. So,
regardless of the cartridge that it's chambered in.
Right. I have to say, this is definitely one of the best. So much so that striker-fired companies have tried to pursue this. Remember the Hudson H9?
Yeah.
So they tried to blend like a 1911 with the trigger and all that into a striker-fired handgun. Now that thing, was unsuccessful, and I don't think it was because it was a bad design or anything. I think it was just because
it hadn't evolved properly
or whatever.
Yeah.
Was a big part of that. And so,
I think Daniel Defense actually bought the rights to that, but they haven't done anything with it.
It would be cool to see a new and improved Hudson like H9 or something come out.
Yeah.
Because I thought that pistol was kind of cool. That was a neat little thing. So
yeah, it's a shame what happened there. But yeah, they were trying to borrow the 1911's ergonomics, like you said, and put it into a different gun. And that's been done many times. A lot of people will tout, a new design as having 1911 style ergonomics. But there's another feature of the 1911 that people may not know or understand, but the basic operation of the 1911, what's called a Browning action, which is nothing more than a tilting barrel, right? So during the turn of the century, when this was being developed, in the early 1900s, this thing was competing against other companies and other designers' ideas in terms of how to delay the opening of the action for full power cartridges like 9mm 45 ACP. At the turn of the century, pocket pistols were very popular, 32 ACPs, 25 autos, 22s, but they didn't really require a locked breech because the pressures were so low. You step it up to a 9mm 45 ACP, now you have to delay that action from opening to get the pressures to drop before it's safe. Well, Browning came up with an ingenious design. You contrast this handgun and its simplicity to something like the Luger, and it's a world of difference. This thing is light years ahead, so much so that whatever you guys are carrying right now on your hip, there's about an 80% chance, I'm making that number up, but it's high, there's about an 80% chance that it's based on the Browning action. CZ, SIGs, M&Ps, Glocks, all based on the Browning action. Simplified. They got rid of the drop link, but the whole mechanism of the barrel tilting down and coming back up into locking as it goes into battery, directly borrowed from the 1911, which then translated to the Browning high power, which then translated into all sorts of guns that have, over the years and decades, borrowed heavily from Browning's design. So it's not going anywhere. This gun is still, to this day, inspiring new handgun designs. If for nothing else, just the way that it locks up. Now, granted, we've moved into polymer frames and striker-fired pistols have taken off, but there's just certain things about the 1911 you're just not going to duplicate. That's the original look and feel, and that trigger you're talking about. What makes that so unique? I'll grab a different pistol here. This is an example of a really, really nice 1911. This is a Dan Wesson Specialist. Everything on this thing is fit properly, right? And you can expect that for the money you're going to pay for this. So a properly tuned and fitted handgun like a Dan Wesson is going to run you $1,500 or more, all right? You can get some of the handguns that are out there, like from the Philippines, and they're $500-$600, right? So you can get into the 1911 fairly affordably now. At least it's competitive with its contemporary other designs that are out there. But when you step into the realm of this pistol, everything is absolutely perfect. There's so many things you have to look at when you're looking at 1911. First of all, you want to make sure somebody hasn't done a hammer job that isn't proper. So you want to push after it's cocked, push on that hammer, make sure that it's not going to trip off its ear. I've seen it happen. Yep. And somebody wants to do their own trigger job. They're an expert, so they start stoning and polishing their sear to the point where they've destroyed it. You want to make sure that the safety is positive and works properly. The detent's working, because this is critical to the safety of the gun. You want to push down on the hood and make sure there's no downward movement on that hood, on the barrel. And then you want to just test fire it, make sure that, or dry fire it, I should say, or test fire it if you can. Dry fire it, make sure everything's cycling properly, run the slide, stuff like that. But if you do that, it's going to probably last you a lifetime if everything is working properly. But that trigger, what makes that special? Unlike most handgun designs, they have a pin that runs to the receiver and the trigger hinges. It swings, right? Think of a screen door. On the 1911, that's not the case. The trigger is at rest. in here, and when you press the trigger, it pushes straight back against the sear, so you don't have that pivot. And that's what, in part, gives you that real positive shelf, and then the break that would follow afterwards. So, man, I've never felt another gun. I've fired guns with some really high-end triggers, CZs included, right? Like the Shadow series of pistols.
Yeah.
You know, to me, those triggers are almost too light. They don't have the same feedback. It's a great trigger, but I don't shoot it as well as a 1911. The trigger on it pales when compared to the 1911 trigger.
I do have to agree. The 1911 trigger is one of the best out there. But I think the reason why most people dislike this handgun, and I guess you could say myself included, was, let's say this is, well, let's delete the little optic, or not the optic, but the light rail here. This would be about as modern as you got. You know what I mean? You would get, no light rail down there. You could have night sights on there, and you were kind of done. And most people did, again, extended beaver tail, whatever it is, change the grips, and that was it. And then, again, like 7-round capacity, maybe 7+1, 8+1, whatever it is, right? And then you would get the folks that would, I always love this comment, well, if you can't get it done in 7, then you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So I think that was what brought these things down. Then you had people like Para Ordnance, I want to say, that made like a double stack 45, but then the grip was just so fat that nobody could even hold on to that. So I know we've been seeing a lot of companies now coming out with double stack 1911s that are at 9mm. Those seem to be pretty popular. Wilson Combat, I think, makes a nice one. The guys Staccato, 2011 guys, STI.
There's a couple of companies making 2011 style pistols now.
Right. So they've kind of brought down the caliber into 9mm. Now, that's nothing new, but, and double stacking those, which is nice to see. And then they're actually optics cutting them now, so you can get optics, so you can put a red dot on there. You get the light rail on there. So now they're taking these pistols, which is nice to see, and modernizing them and bringing them into 2022, if you will. So that's why I don't think you're going to see the death of this pistol anytime soon. One, it's just its history, heritage, and everything else.
Americana, yeah.
Right. So,
well, that's all that stuff is absolutely true, and I agree with. I want to talk about the 9mm version, but before I do that, guys, I want to thank the folks over at Arms List for helping to make today's video possible. Arms List is a great place to shop for firearms, and it's like a classified ads, if you will, like a Craigslist for firearms. They do have a low monthly membership fee. That's to kind of keep some of the problem users out of the mix, but they also have like a great FFL dealer network with over 1,300 FFL dealers for secure online purchases, trusted online purchases. But you also can just meet somebody in person and conduct a private sale of a firearm, and there's no fees or surcharges or anything like that. So check them out. They're also involved in a number of lawsuits that will benefit the 2A community. Those are broken down on their website, and you can check those out over at armslist.com. All right, so this is a 9mm 1911. This is new from Alpha Foxtrot. They've been manufacturing 1911 components for a number of the top players out there for quite some time, but they're stepping out of the shadows and starting to manufacture them under their own brand name. Now, this is a compact style pistol. It has all the features you'd expect to find on a modern 1911 that you're talking about, the 1913 rails down here. I do believe an optics cut version is coming later, but it has nice low profile 3-dot sights on here, in this case night sights. It has the extended beaver tail. It is actually I believe this is a aluminum receiver, but it's all machined. So there's no grip panels on it. It's fairly narrow, and its unique feature is it uses the Shield S15 magazines. So this is the Alpha Foxtrot S15. And that, to me, is really cool. So you got 15 rounds of 9mm in here in a very small, compact frame. And
that's a nice shooting gun. I shot that gun. It's very light on the recoil department, which is very nice. You can have fast follow-up shots with it. You get the 1911 great trigger. And, again, now we're bringing it into the modern times. So it's nice to see that they're creating... I hate using that's like a Glock 19 comparison, you know what I mean? But it is. It's a nice compact carry gun. So I shot that thing and actually really enjoyed shooting that pistol.
I was surprised at how well it shot. It does have a bushingless design. It's very simple, has forward slide serrations, all that stuff. Everything you'd want in a 1911, everything seems to fit properly. So I think that, perhaps in the future, if they wanted to improve upon this, they should allow people to put their own grip panels on there, just put some studs in there and let people adjust their grips, because I will say that it feels a bit slab-sided to me. I'm used to handgun grips coming out a little bit and meeting the inside of my palm and fingers. So if this were flat, it would feel a little bit awkward, but there are a lot of people that like that flat feel even on the single stacks, right? So you'll see some single stacks out there with some really flat contoured grips on it. Everybody prefers something a little bit different. We're not built the same, but very, very cool handgun. But there are a number of 9mm out there that people are really starting to consider. Now, you did mention red dot sights. This is a Springfield that is optics cut. So now this gives you an idea what it would look like. This is a 10mm with a heavy bull barrel on it. This is a handgun that I keep around. Ideally it'd be something I'd take a deer with. I haven't done it yet, right? People ask me, what are you going to use this deer season? It's something different every year, right?
Oh, I know.
And so I have like 50 guns waiting in the wings for deer season. But I always wanted to take a deer with a 10mm. Haven't done it yet, but this would be a handgun I would do that with, or go hog hunting with it, right? So red dot sights on handguns, either love it or hate it, but it is the future. You're not going to get around the fact that red dot sights are here to stay, just like they were with the rifle. So the fact that the 1911 has been able to come around to modern era expectations in terms of features is pretty interesting for a gun that was literally designed, over 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. You take a look at other designs like in the rifle world, the AK, it hasn't translated well into modern times. With its awkward side rail for optics and, really nothing you can really do. There's third-party market support for it that can kind of strap things onto it to try to make it competitive and try to make it modern, but still, it's putting lipstick on a pig. The thing just wasn't designed with, any foresight in that design. So we've already picked on them for that. I love the AK. I'm not saying the AK is garbage. It's a very classic rifle, and I love shooting them. It's just not modern. And the 1911 has somehow, like the M16, remained relevant through all these years. Mm-hmm. When the M16 came out, it wasn't very forward thinking in terms of what might be used in optics. It had an optics hole in there that you could put a scope on it, but it was a little bit high, way too far forward and awkward for most shooters. But later they would just shave that off, put a pick rail up there, and that became the new military standard. Right. So the 1911's done similar. And to me, I think that anybody that talks trash on the 1911 either is just a fanboy of some other product and they're just not even considering it, or perhaps they never shot one. Because if you've shot one and you're in that really small minority of group of people that don't like the ergonomics, don't like anything about it, then you're the exception to the rule. Because I've run into very few people in my lifetime that don't like the way the gun feels or shoots.
I was that guy.
Yeah.
I was the guy that downplayed this 1911 just based on what other people say. It's an antiquated pistol, 7 rounds, it's, garbage compared to this or whatever that. And so I actually started shooting some of your 1911s, and I have fallen in love with the guns. There's nothing that beats those ergonomics or the trigger. Now, I noticed, like, with the bushingless and the bushing design, is there any better? Is there a better, being bushingless, is that the better way to do?
It's just a way of doing it, right? Okay. So it removes a part, but it also changes the disassembly a little bit. The bushingless designs have been around for some time. I think the bushing design is probably the most common. Mm-hmm. Some companies, Springfield Armory being one of the early folks to do that, I think it was their operator series of pistols that all were bushingless in design. And folks clamored for them. They thought it was new and different. But in the end, I'm a bushing type of guy, just like I'm a direct gas impingement type of guy, right? You're messing with something that doesn't need to be messed with. But I don't think you're going to get improved performance in terms of accuracy or shootability from a bushingless design. It's just a different way of doing it, right?
Because I have watched you stretch these things out to like 150 yards.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen you do it. And it's like, wow. And it, you could take a striker-fired pistol or whatever it is, and now, guys, they laugh about this, but like, picture the man size at 150 yards with just these 3 dots. Like,
it covers the target completely.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to do. And, but the accuracy wise, like either the trigger pull has a major factor in that, because we do with that in long range shooting. Mm-hmm. When you're shooting a mile, every little thing that you do to that gun translates to feet off target. And so with the, just a regular like M&P or Glock, just that trigger squeeze can deviate that 9mm, 45, whatever it is, off target. So the 1911 lend well to accuracy.
If you go to the local indoor shooting range and you look at people shooting at 7 to 15 yards, or shooting groups like this, typically, your average shooter. And that at 7 yards turns into something the size of this room at 150 yards in terms of where that bullet's going.
Right.
So that's where guns like this Dan Wesson, which is actually chambered in 10mm, really shine, because the cartridge is well suited for that type of shooting. Now, it's not practical to shoot at that distance. It's more or less, look what I can do type of thing. But this gun is just such a shooter. And what's nice about the 10 millimeter, not only does it have the power of a 357 Magnum, but it's smaller in diameter than 45. So you can get 9 rounds into a standard magazine and then load one in the chamber. So you're actually carrying 10 rounds of 10 millimeter versus 8+1. You got 9+1. So you gain a round when you go to 10 millimeter. I'd love to see a 2011 style pistol, with 10 millimeter. I think that would be super cool. I don't think that's been done yet. Maybe it has. I just haven't seen it. But
like a double stack 10 millimeter.
Yeah,
that'd be definitely
Wouldn't that be
unique.
Cool? Yeah,
I think so
10 millimeters back on the rise, so somebody's going to do it, I would imagine, because 10 millimeters, everybody's making a 10 millimeter now.
We had that video, and I have to agree. I mean, I even picked up one of those SIG X10s just because it's probably my favorite 10 millimeter. So
yeah, and people was kind of funny, not funny, but interesting in the comment section. People are saying, "Why aren't you talking about the problems with the X10?" Haven't had any problems. I don't watch other people's videos and then say, "Oh, the guns are flawed because Joe said they're flawed." I don't even watch the videos. I evaluate every gun based upon my own experiences. Now, if something's really, really bad, like the issue with the Bren 2, we tried to duplicate that fault with guns that we had. We couldn't do it. A viewer, a Patreon, sent us their gun, because it was experiencing the problems, and then we were able to videotape the problem and try to diagnose it. But we couldn't talk about something we hadn't experienced yet. And so the X10,
so far so good.
What problems? I don't have any problems with it so far. Right. So unfortunately, there are people out there that are having problems. Not saying they don't exist, but that's just, I guess, the downside of anything that you buy that's brand new, right?
Right.
You run that risk. So anyway, yeah, I think the 1911's here to stay. I don't think there's anything people can really say about it that would dissuade me from ever, carrying one periodically just for nostalgic purposes. If you're out there and you're considering a 1911, don't let the internet brain trust talk you out of trying one. At least put one in your hands. If you have a buddy that has one, go shoot it, right? Feel it, shoot it if you can for yourself, and see if you like it. Because I think if you're somebody that really likes to shoot small groups and you like to go to indoor ranges, especially in 45 ACP, a very easy cartridge to load for, it's just a great target shooting handgun, but it's also still a very relevant defensive carry gun.
Yeah, I would say my biggest downside, the reason why I don't carry a 1911 or anything, is most of them are all metal, and then when you do load up a full magazine in here and carry this thing around, there is a lot of weight.
They are very heavy guns.
So, definitely if you're going to carry one of these, make sure you got a nice, belt that can accommodate it. Other than that, I mean, they carry well. They're nice and slim. And
yep, and there are aluminum, I can't speak English. The aluminum frame versions shave some of that weight off, but still it's a heavy gun.
Yeah.
It is. But that weight also translates into recoil reduction, perceived recoil reduction, and just being a flat shooting, natural, comfortable gun to shoot. People will say that the 45 ACP or the 10 millimeter is just too much for a new shooter. No, it's not. I mean, my kids, pre-teen, they were shooting 1911s. My oldest son loves shooting the things, 10 millimeter included with full house loads. They are so well rounded that they just make it very pleasant to shoot regardless. Now, I haven't tried one in 460 Roland yet. That would be the extreme to test how pleasant the gun is to shoot. But 10 millimeter with a full house load is no slouch, and perfectly manageable and very, very comfortable to shoot. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I look forward to your comments down below. What do you think about the 1911? Do you guys love it or do you hate it? And if you hate it, why do you hate it? If you love it, why do you love it? I look forward to reading those comments. Many times in reading those comments, we'll come up with content for future videos. So please do comment down below. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best way to do that is to become part of our Patreon family. There is a link in the video description below. Click that link, check out some of the perks, and consider supporting us on Patreon. Also, right here on YouTube, you got that little join button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash that join button, and you can support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. And last but not least, please check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 14 years of support and viewership, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Take care, guys.